Good evening. I knew I would be overlooked tonight. Your Excellency, Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, and St. George's fans. To you all I say, Unakushe, Akwaba, Ekabo, Habari za Jioni, and Sani Bonana from South Africa. These are greetings I bring to you from the continent of Africa, home to 1.3 billion people and more than 3,000 tribes. Each with its own language, custom, and traditions, and 35 of which is represented in Bermuda. Today we remember an African giant, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, who was born on this day in 1892 in Hara, Ethiopia, which is also the birthplace of coffee. Jumuiya Africa means community of Africans, was formed to promote the cultural similarities and diversities that exist between Africa and Bermuda. This we aim to do through collaborations at events like this, and we thank the Minister, the Department of Community and Culture, in particular Dr. Kim Desmond-Robinson and her team, for their partnership and hard work. We also aim to build and strengthen our cultural, economic, and social ties through networking, sharing of ideas, and exploring opportunities. In this vein, I am sure you can see that we are more similar than we are different. To borrow from the great Chinua Achebe, who said, "A man who calls his kinsmen to a feast does not do so to save them from starving. They all have food in their own homes." When we gather together in the moonlit village ground, it is not because of the moon. Every man can see it from their own compound. We come together because it is good for kinsmen to do so. Bermuda and the African continent are kinsmen. With Jumuiya Africa, let us come together and celebrate our heritage, our culture, and the links that bind us together. And for this year, we pray that St. George's bring back the cup. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henry, for those kind words. And I think we've just afforded an awesome extra time to practice his dance moves before he comes on stage, and so, welcome.
Good evening. The resilience of the African spirit, as we are celebrating today, is best seen from the culture that is awash of the African continent. We have 54 different countries, and as Henry has just mentioned, there's a lot for us to celebrate. We have chosen 4, and clothing specifically to highlight on this evening, as well as food. Specifically because if we were to keep you here to go through all the cultures and the traditions that we have on the African continent, we will be here until St. George's actually wins a cup. And we don't want to hold you that long. So this evening, we're going to look at the Ashanti, the Yoruba, the Maasai, and the Zulu. And many of you would know that there are 2 very distinguished fashion people in Bermuda, Amir X and Linnell Fairbet, who actually do trade on the African continent and have brought a lot of their wares to Bermuda. And that is all a testament of the resilience of the African culture that has stood the test of time, such that our brother Amir and our sister Linnell have been able to go to the continent and share with us what the richness of the African continent brings. Ladies and gentlemen, the first is the Ashanti. The Ashanti are known for kente. The Ashantis belong to Ghana on the West African coast, and kente is something that they're very famous for. Kente dates back to the 14th century, and there are other accounts of it being noted earlier. It is woven in a loom that looks very simple in terms of construction, but is very complicated in what it actually gives out. The loom helps them to weave kente in strips, which is not wider than 4 inches. And those strips are then sewn together individually to make either the male cloth, as I've got on, or the female cloth, as my sister has got on. The male cloth has 24 strips, and then the female cloth has 12 strips. It is not because we're being unfair. It is just that we tend to make better use of the cloth to hide our bulges. Now, whatever design that is made out of those looms, the Ashanti king has the right of first refusal to that design. So if you see any cloth which the Ashanti king has on, then it is not available on the market. If he refuses to accept that design, then it would be available on the market. In the 1950s, Dutch traders to the West African coast introduced the concept of textile printing, which actually was because they introduced textiles to Bangladeshis who did not accept them because they wanted their local Bangladeshi woven material. And that brought the concept of West African traditional prints as we know them today. And so that has brought on the advent of material being copied, and you have some as a runner on the stage. So you'd never have kente as such a runner because it wouldn't be woven that long and put together. So that is the textile prints that we've had since the 1950s, which is going hand in hand with the traditional ones that are woven. A very interesting fact about kente weaving, and I think another aspect of exhibiting our resilience, is that it is very mathematical. And one would have thought that because Africans are believed perhaps not to have had the knowledge of these sciences, we wouldn't have it. This is a function, PhD research of a function of how it is for people who are ordinarily not educated to be able to weave the kente cloth as we have it now. I wouldn't be able to explain what it means, but that is the formula just for putting the yarns through the heddles and the ones that go into the beater to push the cloth into making the designs. Kente is obviously having all its different colors. The colors have meanings. And for the purpose of this evening and to balance the St. George foray, I would look at red and blue, which is passion, and pure spirit and harmony. And I think our brothers and sisters from the West are very much able to be characterized by those wonderful colors. So every color in a kente cloth, and I think you'd see this as a thread through all the cultural clothing that we'll show you tonight, has a meaning. And the Ashantis generally say we speak in proverbs. We don't go direct, and therefore our clothing and what we put together in the colors lead you to what message we're actually trying to put across. So in terms of how the Ashanti cloth has gone up, out in the world and been shared, this picture you see here is what our first President Kwame Nkrumah gifted to the United Nations General Assembly. The meaning is Tikro Inko Ejina, which means one head cannot reach a consensus. And that is what was sewn and gifted to the United Nations. You do have kente now being used as socks, the patterns being used as socks. If you have 6-pack, like the gentleman up there, you can sew a pair of shorts. But if you have one keg like myself, then you're better off with a cloth like this. So you can cover it up. And if we have kente as well, getting onto the fashion walks, that's Louis Vuitton this year, I think February. And then if you talk about controversy, the US Senate had kente stoles on, and it generated a lot of controversy sometime this year or last year. So in a nutshell, that is kente of the Ashanti people of Ghana. Thank you. We will now move on to look at the Yoruba. The Agbada belongs to the Yoruba people of West Africa, and it does cross into the borders of Benin as well. The history or the origins of the Agbada can be traced to the trans-Sahara trade, which dates pre-Christian era to the 19th century. It is believed that Arab, Berber, and Tuareg traders brought this type of clothing to the West African coast. And so it is very popular on the West African coast. It is most likely that if you go to any West African country, you would see Agbada there. It has different names. The Hausa and the Fulani call it the Riga. The Senegambians, that is Senegal and Gambia, and those in those geographic regions call it the Mbu. And those of Francophone West Africa call it the Bubu. To sew Agbada requires, and I think for most of you who are aware of what pertains to Africa, you normally go into a tailor to be measured and for your clothing to be sewed for you. We don't have the luxury of going to any place in town to actually get it done. So we have sewing and then the pattern that goes with it. Now the Agbada has 4 parts. 1, the hat, which is the fila. Then the shokoto, which is a pair of trousers. Then the awutele, which is the undervest. And then we have the awusoke, which is the free-flowing outer robe. It is not surprising, therefore, that the Yorubas gave it the name Agbada, which means voluminous attire. And for the ladies who are here, I think most often than not in African culture, you'd see the separation. This is the one we're presenting to you today to exhibit the fact that you can also wear them. And so Agbada is actually unisex. So the embroidery in the Agbada is pretty much the most evident when you look at it, especially from what the male wears, as my brother is wearing here. And those have themes that can be religious, can be cultural, can be whatever you want. You know, you can design your own, and then it would be sewn onto your dress for you. In terms of materials, I have grouped them into 2. Those that are available in Yoruba areas, which is the ashoke, the kampala, the adire, and then the batik. But they do also use other materials which are imported, being lace, as my brother and sister have got on, cashmere, and sometimes even velvets. So in terms of how we have the Yoruba culture has influenced the world, you would see here kind of a trend of fashion. And the Yorubas, I think there are over 60 million Yorubas. And so they actually are very well traveled, and they've taken a lot of these clothing to many parts in the world. You'd see a very elaborate embroidery to the front of the gentleman. I think he is drinking, toasting to the victory of St. George's. And then you have the picture in the middle, which is ashioke being used to make the Agbada cloth. Now, one hairdo, which I guess is the most flamboyant in Africa, is what we call the gele. is very specially Nigerian. I would love to see it on the catwalks of royal ascot to see how they compare to the hats that we see there. But that is what the Yorubas are actually experts in. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, the Agbada of the Yoruba people. We will now have the Zulus. The Umucha of the Zulu people who are in South Africa do occupy the land space between the landlocked countries of Swaziland and Lesotho in what is called the KwaZulu-Natal province, is a very traditional dress which adorns them and which you may have found, especially linked with the famous warrior Shaka the Zulu. Traditionally, the Zulus do use animal skin, and it could be any animal except for the warthog or a pig. But there are special skins that must be given to the king. And so there are, I guess, in comparison to the Ashantis, a similar culture or practice, where if anybody went into the bush and either by accident or by calculation killed any of the wild cats, then they were obliged to give that skin to the king. So I've got a picture here of King Goodwill Zwelithini, who is unfortunately just passed, and he has the leopard skin on because that is what royalty are allowed to wear as opposed to commoners. Unfortunately, we've been trying to get our royal credentials in place to get a leopard skin, but we couldn't get that tonight, and we would definitely try and give you that in future events. So the clothing has four main parts. The hairdo for the men, which is the umgele. And then we have what covers the chest and the back, which is the mbata. And then we have what covers the back from your waist down, which is the ibeshu. And then we have another one to the front, which is the isinene. Now, if you know how the Zulus dance in terms of how they kick their legs, there's no way you can do that if you didn't have the isinene to the front of your clothing. And then we have the iwisa, which is the clap which they hold. The females have the headdress, which is called izikolo. Now, the izikolo is something that is a preserve of women in the Zulu culture. They bedeck it in colors that have meanings, and that has gone very far and wide in the world. So you'd see them in different colors. In some subgroupings of the Zulu culture, the izikolo is actually as wide as 1 meter, and it is believed to give them shade in the sun. So we see one of the headdresses here. The Zulus have 7 primary colors which they use in their beadwork, or the females do. And then they also speak through shapes. So the different shapes actually have meanings. And I have been warned in preparing for this that if anybody goes to South Africa and finds a Zulu man dancing heartily towards them, when they have just prior to that point bought some beads, then they have to be careful, because it might be that the message they're sending is that they are available. So if you want to be available, then know how you select your beads. If you don't want to be available, then you know what to do. So we've got that for the married men, so you'd see it through. So this hairdo, for instance, is for a married woman. And if it was for a boy or a girl, then you see the predominant pattern in there. So that is the Zulus and the colors that they use in their artwork. They also have languages that combines the colors. So traditionally, the Zulu color has two different meanings. So red has two different meanings, and sometimes you can put it together to put through what they call love letters. So red, in this sense, is my heart bleeds with love for you. And blue, if I were a dove, I would fly through the blue skies to reach you. I think that sounds very much like Somerset. And we have the striped beads, which says, you are like a striped grasshopper, springing from bush to bush. I will leave that to your imagination, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to how the Zulu culture has influenced clothing in the world, you would see from the top how they have, the dexterity of their arts and their ingenuity has led them to develop different patterns and parts of the beadwork, specifically by the women, and which are made available for sale. Then as well, we would claim that the use of any animal skin pattern is actually something that has come from Zulu culture and what they use it for. So you have the leopard skin clothing, which now are seen in wedding clothing and other high-class catwalk for fashions. Ladies and gentlemen, the Umucha of the Zulu people of South Africa. Our last one for the evening is the Maasai. The Maasais do belong to Kenya, the southern part of Kenya and the northern part of Tanzania, as they traditionally are nomads and do move across these borders. The shuka is their traditional clothing, and it has come into some conflict as to their origins or as to its origin. The Maasais traditionally used to dress in cattle skins or sheep skins, but sometime in the 1960s, they evolved into using shukas. And the shukas in Maasai language actually means body wrapping. It is believed, or there are two accounts as to the origins of the shuka. One is that through the trans-Saharan trade, the Maasais got cotton from up north, and they dyed it with dyes from Madagascar. Another account is that they had Scottish missionaries who came in around the same time, and they introduced the Scottish tartans. It appears from most accounts that both accounts have good reasons to be true, and therefore we will leave that in that position and just celebrate the fact that they have made the shuka what it is today to the world. And that is a testament of their resilience. The Maasais normally prefer the red shuka. And that is because, as you can see in the picture to your top right-hand corner, the Maasai Mara actually has red earth. And they believe that red color actually stands for power. It also, for them, acts as a camouflage when they are out to pasture with their animals. And they feel as well, culturally, that the animals, when they see them in red, would actually not attack them. But younger generations of Maasais have actually introduced different colors as we find here on the slide. The shuka is actually worn by being tied either to the left or right shoulder, depending on the weather and how cold or hot it is. Sometimes you would have a third one put on the shoulder to cover both sides. Sometimes you have one arm or one hand covered and the other holding a stick. And it doesn't appear to follow any strict pattern so long as you're comfortable with what you have on. One thing that appears to run through or that appears to compare the Maasais to the Zulus is beadwork, which coincidentally, again, is still given to a versatile and hardworking African women of the Maasai tribe again. So they are responsible for these and they pride themselves in actually doing the beadwork and passing the art and skill down from generation to generation. Red, as I mentioned previously in terms of their choice and bias, speaks to bravery, strength, and unity. The unity is because when they kill their animals who they revere and normally do not kill, they only do that when there's a community meeting. And the blood of the animals is seen as what gives them the unity because their practices and their foods actually take into account some of these, the blood from the animals. So you've got blue, which is energy in the sky, green, and we have black, and then white as well, which is for purity and holiness. In terms of the resilience of the Maasai and what they've given to the world in the sense of culture, Louis Vuitton, again, he seems to have an eye for Africa, had a show last month where he displayed the shuka of the Maasais. And then you can see that the patterns are being used in all sorts of attires and in very different ways. Ladies and gentlemen, the shuka of the Maasai people.
Thank you to all of our models for showcasing the beauty and ubiquity of Ashanti, Maasai, Zulu, and Yoruba fashion wear. Tonight, I'm sporting my Sudanese jalabia, Somerset edition, like I said, with a takia. In most of my fondest childhood memories, my siblings and I are photographed doing activities we shouldn't be, all while dressed in our jalabias. My sister Hannah in the audience can attest. Yeah. It's the taste of Africa that we got while growing up on the rock, so wearing one tonight brings me a familiar warmth. I'm delighted to introduce the next segment, and perhaps what will be your favorite, food. Please join me in inviting Regina and Sharifa to the stage.
Good evening. As descendants of the enslaved people stolen from Africa, we have often searched for a belonging, a way to connect to our past. People have spent years researching, trying to find a connection to home. Some have gone as far as taking DNA tests just to point them in the right direction. However, you don't actually need to go far to see that we are still connected to our ancestral home. You're probably wondering, what is she talking about? Food, of course. Our love of seasoning and spices act as breadcrumbs left by our ancestors in our souls to remind us of who we are. The habit of washing your poultry and fish with lime may seem foreign to others, but it's second nature to us. Tonight, we are going to discuss just a few ways the spirit of Africa has remained resilient by keeping us connected through culinary delights. The first is salted fish. Traditional Sunday morning breakfast would not exist without it. Salted fish, which in Bermuda is usually cod, is boiled and served with boiled egg, banana, potato, avocado, and Johnny bread. I'm hungry just talking about it. It can be served with either a butter or tomato sauce. I cannot move on before talking about fish cakes. Traditionally made at Easter, these round delights of perfectly proportioned fish and potatoes, pan or deep fried to golden perfection, is the headliner for Good Friday. There are competitions to gain bragging rights to who has the best fish cakes. You may find fish cakes made outside of Easter by someone who has leftover codfish breakfast, but that just means they should have invited me to breakfast. Sharifa will tell us how salted fish is used in Africa.
Well, salted fish was adapted in Africa because we couldn't find, not everyone in Africa has access to a refrigerator. So salting the fish was a way of preserving the fish. And this was done in conjunction with sun-drying it, smoking it. So that's how that was done. So today I'm going to talk about the Makayubu fish, which is a Congolese dish mostly. So how they do this is that they will get the fish, which is the palok fish, and then slice it by the backbone to just make it into a butterfly form. Now from that, they will salt it and sun-dry it. When that is done, it's kept for a long period of time and then sold within the markets. It's a delicacy for them because of the fact that there are so many rivers. In Africa, where there is a river, you'll find people fishing freely as a way of getting food, because not everyone has access to the kind of funds that maybe the educated people would have. So most times people have adopted fishing as a way of getting food. So the makayabu is prepared mostly by just spicing it up with a bit of tomatoes and any spices you want to put in there, and it's going to be yummy for you. It's also done because not only everyone knows fish is good with omega-3, so its parents will do it, especially unknowingly that this is actually something I'm doing for the health of my kids. So I would say this is done in Liberia, Nigeria. All African countries will salt the fish as a way of preserving it. So that's just part of the African way of salting fish. Take it away, Regina.
Cassava. Cassava is a perennial shrub in the same family genus as castor bean. It is, in fact, a cultivated plant that cannot be found in its natural state today. Many cultures through the diaspora use cassava, but in Bermuda, it is the crown jewel of Christmas and Easter dinner. Sorry, turkey and ham. Cassava and farine pie are both made from the cassava root. This sweet dish can be made savory by adding chicken or pork. I like mine plain. Many will only eat their grandma's pie, claiming none other can compare. Sharifa will tell us about the many ways cassava is used throughout Africa.
I'll start with the pastries. In Uganda, we make something like this. It's called kabalagala. So it's basically cassava flour and then bananas. And it's deep fried instead of oven baked. And sometimes we also make biscuits. I will show you other cassava foods we have. So these are the different ways that Africans have, back in Africa, we've come up with in order to enjoy cassava, because it's a staple for most of us because of the famine and drought in Africa. So we all know cassava can last long periods. So here we have starch, which is the yellow up there. It's usually made from fermented cassava. So they will pulp it up and then serve it with stew. Then we have the fufu, which is a delicacy from Nigeria and Ghana. Over there we have the chips. Those are very yummy. I love them. You kind of spice it up. You can put your garlic, you can put your salt, some powdered onion in there, and it's perfect. Like for breakfast with some avocado, yummy. Then we have the abacha, which is a salad from cassava tubers. So you grind the cassava and then you put some bean seed and lots of herbs in there, and you'll have your salad as well. And then we have the cassava leaves. Now, it's funny because most of the time you pick the cassava and throw away the leaves. But in Africa, because we've found diverse ways of enjoying the meal, we make stew from the cassava leaves. Sometimes you put peanut paste in there, depending on which country you go to. But all these are done in Nigeria, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya. And then over there, we have the gari from Ghana mostly. Why I say it's from Ghana like that is because they enjoy it like that with a lot of soup in it. So that's usually pounded cassava, which is fried to make it yellow, and put some palm oil in there, and then you will have it yellow like that. This is all enjoyed because we found ways of getting you filled up with cassava and not needing to eat anything else. So yes, this is some of the, I could talk about that. And then we have, surprisingly, cassava beer. I don't take beer, so I wouldn't know, but this, it's funny because this was locally brewed for such a long time, but it finally hit the international market from Mozambique, from a factory in Mozambique, and now it's a famous beer. So I'm going to say we should bring some of this to Bermuda. I mean, Corona is not popular anymore. Take it away, Regina.
Spanish rice, also known as Mexican rice or red rice in other countries. This flavorful dish reminds me of summer. This one-pot dish can be a side or a main course. It includes onion, garlic, bell pepper, and sometimes bacon. Add in your tomato and you've got a party. Let it simmer. Add in your already rinsed rice, the appropriate amount of water, and let it cook. Don't forget the seasonings. Sharifa will talk to us about jollof rice, which is most likely the grandparent to Spanish rice.
Jollof rice, if you have a friend who is Nigerian, from Sierra Leone, from anywhere, Ghana, you definitely know jollof rice. It's the equivalent of Spanish rice. So basically, if you look at these pictures, someone will post it on Twitter and say, oh, this is from Ghana. And then the least beautiful one may be from Nigeria, depending on who is posting it. Because this has been a kind of a war for them of who makes the best jollof rice. So what I can say about jollof rice is basically almost like Spanish rice. Put some tomatoes in there, spice it up, put some onions, some stew to make it flavorful, and it's been enjoyed by different countries. So I'm going to say this. I'm not from West Africa, so I would enjoy my pilau, which apparently is not compared to jollof rice. But I'll leave the fighting to the West Africans. Maybe I'll go to Somerset and enjoy some Spanish rice. Thank you, Regina.
Sharifa, thank you for this fabulous information. I see a local jollof rice competition in the near future. Our last item is coffee. This brown elixir is a must-have for a large part of the world. Even this tiny island nation, scores of people can't start their day without their morning cup of joe. There is a hot debate whether coffee originated in Ethiopia or Yemen. For today, we side with Ethiopia. Ayal will give us a brief history of coffee, and then we will have a video that shows the elaborate ritual of coffee making in Ethiopia.
Good evening, all. On behalf of myself and my country, I would like to extend my early wishes. Happy Emancipation Day to the beautiful island of Bermuda. It is an honor to share with you the story of traditional coffee making ceremony from Ethiopia. Ethiopia is known as a region of coffee. It is the country's #1 export income. The ceremony itself is a delightful process to watch, and it's considered a high mark of respect to attend. We prepare a very short film to give you an insight. Shortly after the
the film, I'll be able to join you outside. Sorry. I'll be able to join you outside as I'm going to present you another part of the country's tradition, which is the Ethiopian cuisine. And you'll be able to try a variety of traditional dishes. And I hope you will enjoy it. Have a good evening. Thank you. The coffee ceremony is about an hour and a half. It takes about an hour and a half, I think 2 hours of session. As you see, we have a fresh grass to decorate it and just to give it that green flower earthy vibe. And I also have my greens around me. I have my rokobot. We call this table rokobot, having that handle as a small traditional coffee cup. And I have a jabana, which I mix the coffee with. It's traditional part to make our coffee. We actually use green coffee, and we roast it in front of our guest and grind it in front of our guest. We also love to burn our frankincense. This is mudai, small treasure box where we put our frankincense, and we will have a coal. We burn our incense on the top of the coal, just to give the air clarity and positive energy. We have a fresh popcorn also to complement the ceremony. It's good to have a simple snack to go with, because it's, like I say, about an hour and a half session. So you need to have a snack to go with it while you're having a conversation, a chat with your friends and your guests. Usually we use a charcoal bar traditionally, but unfortunately we cannot have it here. I don't have all the material, so I use a small stove, and we roast our coffee. This is a special leaf we use for coffee. It costs 10 adam. It's really good for general well-being, and we like to pour it in a freshly poured coffee. Now I'm serving my guests.
Well, that was absolutely beautiful, so thank you for that. And I'm sure you'll be able to find this video on the department's YouTube shortly after tonight. I'd like to offer a vote of thanks on behalf of the Director of Culture, Dr. Kim Dismont Robinson, who's unable to physically be here tonight due to quarantine restrictions, but who's enjoying the program via live stream. So everyone say hi to Kim. Hi, Kim. Once again, thank you to Ayal, to Sharifa, and to Regina for walking our taste buds through the continent and back home. With your insights, I think this year's Christmas dinner might just have to feature some cassava pie with a side of jollof. You guys can decide whether it's Sierra Leonean, Ghanaian, or Nigerian. I'd like to offer my deepest gratitude to Minister Peets for his support, and to all of our elegant models and presenters who represented our cultures with the utmost grace. Thank you, everyone. Happy Come Match, and have a beautiful night.